Hi, and welcome along to AFTV Transfer Daily, the show that keeps you up to date with players that have been linked with a summer transfer move to Arsenal. Sponsored today by the guys from U2B, who make all these Arsenal-inspired T-shirts. You can see them. There you go. Modelling that one today. I like this one. It's a bit like Public Enemy. I don't know if you guys know that group. Remember that group, Public Enemy? Brilliant group. But show today sponsored by U2B. We're going to put a link in the description if you want to get hold of any of their T-shirts. Make sure you check out their site. Absolutely brilliant. We're also today joined by a very special guest. We have with us today Adam White from Get French Football News. Adam, it's great to have you back on again, mate. How's things?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Robbie. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I bet you are busy at the moment with all the transfer rumours that are flying around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's never-ending transfer windows. Definitely keeping us busy. Lots to talk about.
All right. Well, listen, I'm gonna be, I've got lots of questions for you, and I'm sure a lot of the people watching Transfer Daily today are gonna have a lot of questions for you as well, particularly about Gabriel. We want to find out about Gabriel, right? So, just bear with me a second. First of all, there's a couple of rumours that we need to just talk about more sort of closer to home. First of all, it's the Aubameyang one. I spoke about this yesterday. I did a show about it yesterday, and I said that all the rumours are pointing to the fact that Aubameyang is on the verge of signing a brand new deal at Arsenal worth £250,000 a week to him personally, with add-ons and bonuses if he hits certain targets. And also the talk is that he's been given assurances that Arsenal are going to be making certain signings, are going to be strengthening the squad. And we're being told that we could be hearing about this deal very, very soon. And that would be a big, big positive for Arsenal, Aubameyang signing. However, another bit of news that I'm hearing today that really this one disappoints me. Now, this one's about Ainsley Maitland-Niles. Of course, he had a great semi-final and final for Arsenal, won the FA Cup with them, and I thought he was an integral part of that. He was given that role to play out on the left and nullify the attacks of Man City and Chelsea, and done brilliantly. And he's been at Arsenal from a kid all the way up. And, he's had little periods when he's been indifferent, but I think now we finally found that player. But now that we finally found that player, we're looking to sell him. And, the reports are saying that Mikel Arteta wants to keep Ainsley. He said to the board, let's keep hold of this kid. I now think that we've got the player we wanted. We're going to be able to do great things with him. But he's been overruled, and Arsenal are looking to cash in on him. The rumours are saying anything from about 20 to 30 million pounds. There's talk that Brighton are interested in signing him. Everton, even Spurs, apparently are interested in signing Ainsley. I don't know what you guys think out there, but for me, I just do not understand this one. I really don't. It makes no sense to me. We've found the player now. We've got the player. He can be a top player for Arsenal. He's Arsenal through and through. Why are we selling him? It then makes me think, and we all kind of thought this at the time when we bought Cedric. Why? We got Ainsley who can play back up right back to Bellerin. He can play in various positions. Honestly, it don't make no sense to me, but it does look like Arsenal are going to be cashing in on Ainsley Maitland-Niles. There's also another player, Emile Smith-Rowe, who's been out on loan at Huddersfield. The talk is Arsenal looking to bring him back. I've said before, very, very talented player. Arsenal are looking to bring Smith-Rowe back from his loan at Huddersfield. Indeed, he is back now because that loan is finished. And they are looking to integrate him into the team for next season. So that's good that they're going to be doing that with him. And then there's also Lucas Torreira. A lot of talk today, again, that Lucas Torreira being linked with a lot of clubs, linked with a move away from Arsenal this summer. Atletico Madrid are said to be interested in him. That would be an interesting one because maybe there could be some sort of swap deal in there with Thomas Partey coming the other way plus money. Who knows if Atletico are interested. And then there's a lot of clubs in Italy interested. Torino are very interested in Torreira. So are Fiorentina. Remember, he's only hasn't been there that long. We paid 28 million pounds for Torreira. Will he stay or will he go this summer? Again, that's going to be another interesting one to see. But I'm disappointed about the Ainsley Maitland-Niles one. It just doesn't make no sense to me. As I said, we've got Adam today with us from Get French Football News. And the reason for bringing Adam on today is that we really wanted to discuss some of those French targets or some of those French players that have been linked with Arsenal. Of course, Adam is an expert on French football. Adam, tell everybody what you do.
Yeah, I'm chief features writer at Get French Football News, and I write about French football for The Guardian and various other places, and a regular appearance on this channel talking about French football too.
Brilliant. And apparently you guys got a magazine coming out as well, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a new European football magazine that's all the sort of Get football outlets, Germany, Spain, France, Italy, have all contributed to. It's sort of focusing on the latest stories in European football and sort of burgeoning young talent. There's sort of 10, 12 player profiles, including Kai Havertz and Timo Werner, and sort of the latest stories from all the big clubs. Sort of Pranic's move to Barcelona and Juve's relationship with the Champions League. There's loads in there, so check it out on our Twitter feeds on Twitter.
Definitely worth checking out. Although I don't want to hear nothing about no Timo Werner right now. I want to know about Gabriel. Gabriel Magalhaes, is that the right way to pronounce the surname?
I think it's a good attempt. I don't think I could get closer, to be honest.
But he's a centre-back, Brazilian, plays for Lille. Of course, we got Pepe from. There's a lot of talk that this deal is a deal that's going to get done by Arsenal. There's talk 19 million pounds plus add-ons, which should bring it up to around about 27 million. And Manchester United was said to be the favourites for him. I think Napoli were also in for him as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of talk that he's chosen Arsenal. We need to know about him. Tell us about this guy.
Yeah, he's a really interesting player. I think I really like him. I think that he's sort of the modern archetypal kind of centre-back. Great range of passing, reads the game really well. Bit of sort of a Rolls-Royce defender, to use perhaps a little bit of an older phrase. I think he'd be a really good fit for the Premier League sort of going forward. He has, he's physical as well as having that sort of technical ability. So that could be really useful. And he would fit in at Arsenal. He fits the sort of traditional kind of Arsenal kind of style. So I think that he'd be a really worthwhile addition. He's had a weird career. He sort of bounced around France and didn't really find his way in at Troyes when he joined from Brazil. I was expecting him to sort of start for them. They were sort of lower end league inside, and they got relegated that season. Didn't really make it in at all. And he went on loan to Dynamo Zagreb and didn't play for them either. And then returned to Lille, and he was sort of in and out of the side at best. And then another defender, Adama Samora, got injured, and he basically took his place and never looked back. It was a big surprise to see how well he played alongside Jose Font, and basically took Samora's place and has become like a defensive leader for Lille out of nowhere. He's a pretty inexperienced player overall, given his number of senior appearances at 22 now. So that's something to keep an eye on, that he is quite inexperienced. But I think there's a couple of caveats to this deal. First of all, the price that you mentioned is good. Napoli were the favourites as far as we understood previously, but they were talking much higher than that, which would have been overpaying. And they're supposed to be signing Victor Osimhen as well from Lille, but for quite a high fee, which so maybe there was those two as a sort of a package together maybe. So the fact that Arsenal are looking at that sort of around 20 up towards 30 million, that's a really good price for him. Although that's, the market here is a little bit up and down. We don't really know what the sort of average price is given the pandemic and stuff. So that's a good point. Secondly, I think the only caveat I would put on his sort of performance is that we were discussing previously that, I think he needs a bigger brother. I think, to coin of Jamie Carragher's phrase, I think he needs a solid partner alongside him. He said how much he's learned from Jose Font playing alongside him. Obviously, France is much more defensively compared to the Premier League. Fullbacks don't get forward too much. The teams are set up to sort of, to frustrate often. Not necessarily Lille, but that's still part of their sort of psyche, if you like. And he says he's learnt loads playing from alongside a much more experienced player. And Font's been really good. I know that his player has a bad reputation with Premier League fans from his time at West Ham in particular. But he's been really good for Lille, and I would want, if I was Gabriel personally, I'd want him always, someone representing. I'd be thinking, who's going to be my centre back partner if I'm going to start? Because if it's Saliba, for example, that's two very inexperienced players playing in a league they're not used to, with a lot to learn and no one to guide them. But if there's another defender coming in, I know there's David Luiz, which is potentially the bigger brother situation here.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him in France with PSG. He can be brilliant, but he can also be very, very, the opposite of that. So that could be a slight concern. But an interesting player and well suited to Arsenal. I like him a lot.
Yeah. Vicky says, is Gabriel right-footed centre back or left-footed?
That's a good question. I think he's right-footed.
No, actually, I actually think he's left-footed. I think.
Yeah, footed.
Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting what you say about him having that experienced player next to him, because I guess a lot of Arsenal fans will be looking at it and saying, well, Saliba and Gabriel, but you're saying that both players with their inexperience would need that experienced player next to them, at least to start off with.
Yeah, I would think so. I would like there to be an experienced Premier League defender to play alongside for both of them, really. And it's been interesting to see how it works out next season with Luiz, assuming he's still around, which he probably will be, and both of those two young Ligue 1 players coming in, how that works out with European commitments and who they partner with, and whether there's Luiz plays, if Arsenal fans think he should be playing every game and they rotate Gabriel and Saliba in and out, that would be interesting. But is that the best for the development of both those two players? Because I think something that clubs overlook in this situation is that these players have potential and they're extremely exciting, but neither are the finished article just yet. So I think if you're going to sign a player for, it's still a lot of money, you need to find a way to invest in their development properly. And so many clubs sign, or maybe it's better now, but over the last 10 years, clubs have signed players and not invested in that development. So I think there's a few sort of examples that we might discuss later on that perhaps aren't the right fit. But in this situation, I think Arsenal need to think about how these players, not how they fit into the squad and the team, as well as just they're a good player. So it'd be interesting to see how Arteta handles the three of them.
Yeah. John Miranda is saying, can Gabriel fit into a back three?
He would have relatively limited experience of doing that. I think you could play him in the centre of a back three because his passing is so good. And you could play him on the left of a back three too, but I would be less sure about that. I think he's more used to playing in a two at Lille. And as I said, that's Lille kind of constitutes most of his experience so far. So he'd have to adapt, but I think he could do it.
There's lots of questions coming in. This guy says, how will Gabriel compare to Pablo Mari, specifically as a ball-playing defender? You're saying he is a good ball-playing defender.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I'm not overly au fait with Pablo Mari, but I would say that he has the quality to play in that position for a good Premier League team. So I think if that's something that's prioritised, I know Arsenal have been a little bit more sort of tight under Arteta, at the back. But there's still obviously that Arsenal DNA, and I think he suits that quite nicely.
Okay, here's a question. Leg says, who is better, Gabriel or Sarr? I presume he's talking about Malang Sarr at Nice.
Yeah.
He's another player that we've been linked with. He's available on a free transfer, I understand, from Nice. Malang Sarr. Who's better out of the two? Who would you say?
I would say Gabriel with quite a big margin. I mean, I'm less hot on Malang Sarr than other people are. I think he's an interesting option because he's cheap. He's just gone on a free from Nice, but he's been very up and down in his career so far at Nice. He broke into the side at 17 and was brilliant for the first couple of months, maybe even more than that. But then he really dropped off and dropped out of the squad entirely at one point, and he sort of came back in and had a bit of a renaissance, which is a ridiculous thing to say for a teenager. But he's been very up and down, and the fact that Nice are extremely prudent as a club, and the fact that he's gone on the free, and maybe his wage demands were too high, but the fact they've let him go shows that perhaps that they've maybe reached something of a ceiling or a plateau with him. And I would say that he hasn't necessarily got not as an individual, but perhaps on-field sort of persona that might suit the Premier League. He's more versatile. He's a very talented player, and could he potentially one day be a really good Premier League defender? Yes, but it would be sportingly at least, it'd be a big risk. I think financially not, so that might be worth going with. He can play at left back too, and he has played in a 3-man defence on the left hand side of a 3-man defence. So he could be an interesting option. But I think to invest in him as you would want to in Gabriel Saliba, that might be a risk.
Okay. BHT Tornado says, how do you think Gabriel will perform against some of the top attackers? Obviously, top attackers in the Premier League.
Well, it's a step up. I think that's something that again, signing players from France is a little bit sort of tricky to sort of pin down on how they'll succeed, because traditionally French players have adapted to the Premier League very well. You know, they're set up, the physicality of Liga and kind of stands them in good stead for moving to the Premier League. There are some extremely good forwards in France, and they generally adapt really well. But if you're looking at the strikers, the best strikers in the Premier League, Gabriel's got pace, so I wouldn't be worried too much against the sort of faster forwards like sort of Manchester United's counter-attacking sort of side at the moment. But the movement might be an issue. So players with really good movement like Sergio Aguero or sort of players of that ilk, that might something that would be completely new to him, because, as I said, league and defenses, teams are quite sort of stoic and there's less space. So if he's one-on-one and with say the ball's played into someone like Aguero with his back to goal or over his shoulder, those are the type of things he's not going to be used to that level of quality. So that would be interesting to see. He's definitely got the ability to adapt, like I said previously. But again, having not played much against that sort of standard so far, he might have to adapt quite quickly. But I think he's got the attributes to suit the Premier League for sure in general.
Yeah, Carlos Valdez says, how was Gabriel's performance against the Liga and top teams?
Yeah, good. I think the performance that really stood out for me in his earlier Lille days was when Lille beat PSG 5-1. He scored in that game, and they were brilliant. And him and Font as a defensive partnership were really solid. They're great going forward. And I think Font scored in that game too, actually. And yeah, he has performed well in those games. So that's obviously a really good sort of plus point for him, because the best league and type sides are. I mean, you can debate where they finish in the Premier League all day long, but they're definitely, there's some equality between them and some good Premier League teams. So that's a good sign in a good step.
Ish says, what happened to Hossein Aouar? Still think we need him instead of the Barca flop. I think he's on about Coutinho there. Think about this. Hossein Aouar, that was a super chat from Ish.
Yeah. Hossein Aouar, yeah. I think this is a really interesting player, because I think he's the best. I mean, if you exclude Kylian Mbappe, he's the best talent in France at the moment. And he's still very young, obviously. He's still, 21, I think. And so technically gifted, so graceful on the ball, brilliant midfielder. Like, reminds you of Andres Iniesta. Does sort of similar things. And I don't certainly use that lightly, because I love Andres Iniesta. He's probably my favorite player of all time. So there are similarities there. The only thing with him is that I was discussing with a colleague at GFN about it, actually, that I'm not sure he has the arrogance, if you like, or the sort of to impose himself on a really big club, because games where he dominates in Lyon are quite rare, and he'll sort of his technical ability is obvious, and his Champions League performances have been good, to be fair to him, but the games where he really imposes himself are quite rare. So you'd expect him, the standard that he can play at, to go to a bigger team. He's good enough to do it and impose himself, say, this is my team, this is my midfield, I'm going to be the creator in chief, if you like. But whether I've not really seen signs that he could do that personality wise, quality wise, yes. So that's a really interesting point. I think at Arsenal as well, is he the type of midfielder that they want to sign in terms of sort of attributes? Yes, but again, I don't know what Arteta or Arsenal thinks about what Arteta's changing the sort of psyche of the team a little bit. But do they want someone a little bit more imposing in midfield? And could he get lost in that sort of Arsenal? I don't know. But maybe now Arteta's there, he's the right sort of coach to bring him on. So there's a sort of balancing act there.
Loads of questions coming in about Gabriel. Sasa says, is Gabriel calm and composed centre back, or does he rush in when he sees danger?
Definitely calm and composed. I think I've said he's a little bit like Rio Ferdinand before. He's sort of similar stature, and the way he moves around the pitch, the way he sort of passes the ball, that's one of a relatively good comparison.
Kevin Lee says, how about Camavinga from Rennes? He'd be a good alternative to Partey, a very expensive one. If Atletico keeps playing hardball, Camavinga, I know Real Madrid are interested in him. Will he be on the move this summer?
It's a very difficult question, because I would say probably, as you know, this is as they say in Spain, this is information. This is opinion, not information. That I don't think he will move this summer, but it's feasible. But with Rennes making the Champions League, if they make the group stages, then that's quite an attractive proposition for a 17-year-old to stay another year, having become one of the club's most important players, with a really good coach and Julian Stefan, who's brought him on loans and has a really good relationship with him, and he's got time. So he seems like a player with a very level head and wouldn't want to rush into anything, because players have done that before and it hasn't worked out at such a young age. So I think what would be best for him, and from my perspective, what will happen is that he'll probably stay another season at least and develop, because the ceiling with him is so high. And if he was to go to, say, Real Madrid, like you said, that would he play? Probably not. And would that halt his development? Yeah, quite significantly. Maybe he's got more of a chance of getting in the Arsenal team, but again, is he going to be in and out of the side? He needs assurances, I think, on game time. And is he ready for the Premier League? He's still young. He's still developing. So yeah, he's a great talent, and watch him in France next season. But maybe next summer would be better.
Jared says, and he's going back to Gabriel here. What's he like in the air? For defense and attack. Now this is very important, as we know, in the Premier League. You see balls flying in. I mean, what is he? What is Gabriel like in the air?
Yeah, good. He's definitely good in the air. I think it's pretty common for French defenders to be. They kind of have to be good in the air, because, like I said, the amount that we talked about Axel Disasi before, and at Reims they sit very deep, and him and Younes Abdelhamid, who's the bigger brother of that partnership. They have to be good at heading the ball away and reading and the play and positioning themselves. And although Lille are a much more attacking team, both Gabriel and Font have a similar duty quite often, just because of the nature of the league. So he's definitely, again, suited to the Premier League in that regard.
Okay, stay here. Stay Walsh says, what's Gabriel? This is another important one if you're an Arsenal fan. What's Gabriel's injury record like? Is he likely to get a big one? You can never predict that, but what's his injury record been like?
Yeah, decent. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't think he's had a major injury for quite some time. When he first arrived in France, he did have a significant injury, but since then, I'm struggling to remember another significant one. So
okay,
for now, decent.
Till he gets to us.
Yeah.
Says, how's his relationship with Pepe? The relationship between Pepe and Gabriel, and also this guy UTG says, what do the Lille fans make of him?
Well, that's two very interesting questions. I think the relationship with Pepe, I don't know specifics. I don't know if they're close, but their time in the Lille first team didn't overlap too much. So I wouldn't go as far as to say they're extremely close, because Gabriel only really got in the side that season that Pepe left, and towards the end of that season, and he was on loan before that. So they're not, they haven't grown up at Lille together. If that's sort of what the question's asking. What's the second question?
What do the Lille fans make of him?
Oh yeah, I think they're extremely positive. I think Lille fans in general are a pretty hardy bunch. They've had so many false dawns. Bielsa was ridiculous. Hervé Renard was supposed to be their savior and then wasn't, and they nearly got relegated a couple of times. So to have players like Gabriel and like Pepe, and there are others, Jonathan Okone, Jonathan Bamba, and to be fighting for these sort of places in the top three in the Champions League this season, of course, I think they're kind of a fan base that are just happy to have some quality defenders in their side. But I think that obviously big fans.
Okay, let me ask you about there's a couple other players as well. Well, this one, Ibrahima Diallo. We spoke about him yesterday. Sort of like a box-to-box midfielder, stroke deep lying, plays for Brest. Another guy has been linked with Arsenal. The talk is if, say, Arsenal were unable to get Thomas Partey, who seems to be their top target there in that position, they may move for Diallo. What about it? What's he like, Diallo?
Yeah, I think you did a good job of sort of summing up. He is sort of a deep lying kind of box to box player, dynamic, good on the ball, does impose himself in games at Brest. But I think for him, he's another. Maybe I'm more cautious than the average sort of journalist, maybe. But I think he would need another season in France. You know, Brest were a promoted team last year. They overachieved with a weak squad, to be honest. When they came up and stayed out of the relegation fight. And he was key to that. You know, he given that again, they're actually a more attacking team as well. But so he sort of relied on his mobility in midfield and his ability to protect the back four and do various jobs really in that midfield. So I think he's a really exciting player, but to move to Arsenal now would be early for me.
His brother plays for PSG. Looks just like him as well, doesn't he? His brother.
Abou Diallo. He's had an interesting season as well, up and down in defence. But he's actually one to keep an eye on too. Exciting talent as well.
Yeah. Guendouzi. Of course, you know, I mean, came from France, you know, fairly unknown. Come to Arsenal, has been doing well. Then under Arteta, it's just gone all wrong for him. You know, ever since that game against Brighton, he's been left out of the team. It looks like Arsenal definitely looking to cash in on him this summer. What have they made of that situation over there in France? Because he is seen as a top French prospect, isn't he? He was, you know, he got into the French national team. And what have they made of this whole situation with him over there in France?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting situation with him because one thing with the French media is that they often report what the English media say. So you've got to sort of sift through the things that are coming out of France and the things that are just sort of being parroted back from England. But it seems that the reports that come from TF1, who a while back reported that he was sort of linked with, they heard he was sort of linked with Manchester United, I think, and the keeper had a few sort of links as well with other clubs for him. That in France, the opinion is that, you know, this is very much a goer. You know, that he does seem to be on his way, and that various clubs are interested. In fact, I was looking before we came on at various reports that GFN have been sort of reporting about him, and he's been in with every club under the sun, both in England and in France. So he, you know, the opinion is very much that he will or should be going if there's sort of the stars align, if there's an opportunity to do so.
Are they disappointed though? Are they disappointed in him because it's the way this has all ended up, isn't it? It's not because of his ability on the pitch. It seems to be off the pitch problems, and it's been quite a few. Yeah,
absolutely. I think maybe disappointed is approaching right. I think that perhaps not that surprised is probably fair too, from the opinion of France, because at Lorient, you know, this isn't particularly anything new. I mean, at Lorient there are some attitude issues as well, and he was brilliant when he broke into the team getting relegated, but he stood out a mile. He was great. And he was sort of out of the team when they got relegated and for attitude problems with pulling out the manager. So, you know, I think maybe disappointed, yes, but also, you know, it's nothing new. So not too surprised, I think, is some of the opinion of some.
Good bad attitude. Abe says, would Draxler be a good signing for Arsenal? We were linked with him years before he went to PSG.
Yeah.
Does he still have what it takes to be a top player?
I think so. Yeah,
you think so?
Yeah. This is the opposite to who we were talking about earlier. I think where I said, you know, I was a little bit, I wasn't as hot as other people. I'm still a big fan of Draxler. I think that there are caveats to this too, of course. I think PSG, when he signed, which is Christmas, 2 or 3 seasons ago now, started really well, but playing in attacking positions, he's actually been pretty average for them. But where he's really shone is in midfield. Because Thomas Tuchel was pretty upset about his lack of midfield options. Last season now, and he ended up using him as a central midfielder, even a deep line midfielder alongside Marco Verratti. They pitched like a 4-2-4, and him and Verratti were brilliant in midfield. There were some games where Draxler dominated the ball in midfield, and between him and Verratti were pretty unstoppable. So I think it depends where you play him, and obviously he's an attacking player by trade. He's an attacking midfielder or a left winger by trade. But perhaps if Arsenal were to sign him, if it's something that they were going to look at, I would want to play him deeper in midfield because he's so good technically. He's so good on the ball. He can his vision is brilliant, and still scores a goal. He's got a brilliant sort of double header where he ran through, flipped the ball up and flicked it over the goalkeeper as well. So he's still got so much talent. So I like him a lot, but that's kind of my opinion. Others are less hot on him than me.
Okay, Ben McDonald says, any news in France about Moussa Dembele possibly leaving Lyon? Would love to see him at Arsenal, especially if we get rid of Lacazette.
Yeah, I think this is because we were talking a little bit before we came on, and Lyon are interesting this season because they're not going to get into Europe realistically. They're in the difficult side of the Champions League draw. They're not going to win it. And they probably wouldn't anyway. They're probably the weakest side left in the competition. So they're not in a strong position as they are usually. Jean-Michel Aulas, the president, plays hardball a lot and gets lots of good deals, to be fair to him. He represents his club really well. But he doesn't have, as we were saying before, he doesn't have the strong footing this season to play that hardball. So the only thing is that interest in Dembele has been a little bit slower this summer than perhaps was thought. Maybe the fee that Aulas was demanding originally has put people off. He had a really good season last year. I think this is a case where if he'd gone last summer, he was doing heavy with Man United last summer. If he'd gone there, that would have been too early. But he's had this other season to really develop. And I think he was really good last year and now ready to go. So it'd be interesting if he was to move on, because I think it's the right time. But oddly, the opposite seems to have happened. Interest has sort of waned a little bit. So maybe there's some, if Lyon don't win the Champions League, maybe there's some deal to be had on the price, and maybe someone will come in for him. But over the last month or so, it's got a bit quiet on him.
Okay. Tyler says, Robbie, could you ask him? I think he means you.
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah.
Could you ask him how Ibrahim Sangar from Toulouse is on a daily basis? Could he be an alternative to Partey?
Yeah, that's a really left field one. I like Ibrahim Sangar a lot. At Toulouse, they were really not very good last season at all, and he got a little bit swamped in that midfield. Toulouse are a strange club. It's a rugby town. They don't have a huge amount of fans, and they're often near the bottom of those sort of average attendance tables. And they re-signed a manager that they sacked because he was going, they were going to get relegated on him, and they only got, I think they got 13 points from that last season. They were on for like a record low sort of tally. So last season is a bit difficult to judge him by. But the previous year and in previous seasons, he's looked really promising. A really sort of physical defensive midfielder, good on the ball as well. Like worked really well with a couple of other midfielders. One of which was John Bostock, if people remember him. Yeah. At one point, yeah, he's been around France quite some time. And I was really hot on him then. But last season, the whole club took a step backwards, and I think he's definitely included in that. But he was probably the only consistent player, captain the side, I think, on occasion too. So he's one to keep an eye on, but I think he needs another season in league and in a side that aren't being completely overrun every week. But an interesting one for sure.
Lincoln says opinions on Saliba. Of course, he played an additional season, even though we bought him last year over there for Saint Etienne. He's now at Arsenal officially. We'll get to see him. You never know. In a couple of weeks' time, he might play in the Community Shield. What sort of season did Saliba have over there in France last year? Yeah,
it was perhaps not the ideal season from an Arsenal fan's point of view, because a very stop and start. He had a couple of injuries, one in pre-season and another one sort of autumn, I think. They weren't, catastrophic, but they kept him out for a fair few weeks. And then, of course, the stoppage for COVID-19, he was very much sort of stop and start for him. So he perhaps didn't get the progression that perhaps Arsenal fans were hoping. I imagine when they loaned him back, Arsenal, they thought, he'll play every game and he'll come to us a year older, a year wiser, and have had that experience, which is really important for someone like him under his belt in the right sort of environment. He grew up at the club and setting a good team for Saliba. They were the right sort of fit for what Arsenal wanted. A potentially European chasing team and some good quality players, a good coach. So that's a little bit unfortunate. So I think that as a result, perhaps he's going to be slower into this Arsenal team than perhaps our fans would hope. Still an extremely exciting player. Still looked really good when he did play. But yeah, a little bit stop-start for him of late. But I'm still plenty excited about him.
You think he'll do well?
I do in the longer term. I think this is a key point. Like I was saying before, is how he's managed. Is is really key. And I think Arteta's, again, I think he's proving that he's the right sort of coach to develop these sorts of players. And I think he builds a really good relationship with his squad, which is huge for young players. And Saliba's got so much talent that if they play it right, he could be great. But again, there's so many transfers like this that have been promising. He's still a teenager, could go wrong. So I think it need to be careful with him.
Marcel Smith says, "Hi Robbie, can you ask Adam if he had to choose a centre-back, defensive midfielder, and attacking midfielder from France that Arsenal should go for, who would be his top pick in each positions? Being realistic, of course."
Okay.
There you go. Fire away.
Okay, off the top of my head, I think if we're talking sort of realistic and the right sort of fit, I think for attacking midfield, Morgan Sanson would be a good addition. Plays at Marseille, has linked with Premier League guys for quite a long time. Had a really good period last season. He moved from Montpellier to Marseille a couple of years ago for sort of 9 million, I think. And he's a player I really like. Fits the Arsenal mould, and can play in a sort of a little bit of nuance to way he could play as an attacking midfielder or as an central midfielder. And he would be available for a good fee as well. And Marseille are predisposed to sell. They've got quite a lot of financial issues recently, so. I think he's one definitely, if he does stay in France, keep an eye on next season, but he would be a good fit. So centre back, I think we talked about Gabriel. Disasi's actually going to Monaco today, I think. So he might be one that's kind of off the table. And I think, as always we discussed previously, Gabriel's probably a good shout, given especially that price that you quoted there. If that's ends up being the price, that'd be really good. So that's a good call. Defence midfielder, we were talking about Pat Gay. That would have been an interesting one we talked about last time. But he's kind of off the table. He's ended up at Marseille via Watford, probably. So that's a really interesting one. Diallo's one to keep an eye on. Off the top of my head, defence midfielders that would be the right fit. Maybe you need to keep an eye on Bruno Guimaraes at Lyon. I think, and maybe not the classic defensive midfielder, but a central midfielder for sure. Really good technically, and has made a huge impact at Lyon. So he's only, I think, before the COVID stoppage, he only played 5 games, and everybody got extremely excited about him. I think he's signed from Brazil. So perhaps not the archetype of defensive midfielder, but one, if he has a really good season, maybe next summer could be a huge prospect.
Okay, let me fire in the questions at you. Loco says, "How is Layvin Kazawa? We will link heavily with him. He's has he signed for anybody? He was available on a free.
Yeah,
G, wasn't he?
He was available to go, but he's actually. I think Arsenal fans should be relatively pleased that he signed a new deal with PSG, because I thought I don't rate him. I think he's been a France international. He's extremely good at Monaco before they signed him, but he's had a few. He's got a Champions League hat trick as well. So he has talent, of course. But I think if Arsenal is looking to sign a player in that position, there are better options.
Afam says, "What do you think of Osimhen? Obviously, another player at Lille. They seem to be reeling him off recently. I don't know. Is he signed already for Napoli or?"
Yeah, I think he's on the verge of signing. It's one of those ones that's supposed to be happening any day now, and then kind of doesn't happen officially. But I think this is another one where people need to be careful, because he was great last season, explosive forward, really good finisher. But it's one season and 2/3 of one season as well. So the price at Napoli have been quoted up to 70 million. Maybe it's not that, at last, when they actually do sign him. But that's a big fee for someone that's very still young and still unproven, really. To for a club like Napoli to spend that money. So I think if we're talking from an Arsenal perspective, I would have wanted him to stay at Lille, and then next summer maybe look at him for half that price. But yeah, so a really exciting player. He could be brilliant at Napoli if he continues that form, but there's a risk for me.
Big risk. Slava Elliott says, "Don Robbie, hi from California. If we could sign any defender from France, who and how much is it to bring to Arsenal? I'll take a loan if needed." Well, you sort of already said you're saying to us, Gabriel is.
Yeah, I think that's the right fit. Yeah, if there's a bigger brother, I think that would be the right fit from the crop at the moment. You could look at fullbacks, of course. That we haven't talked too much about fullbacks. There's a guy at Angers who's one to keep an eye on, Ryan Aït-Nouri, who had a really good season last season. Broke in. Angers were actually sort of delaying him into the first team supposedly because he was so good they didn't want people to sign So he sort of made his debut last season. A little bit lightweight at the moment, but this season, keep an eye on him. He's a left back. Maybe next time he could be. He's still a teenager too. He could be one to keep an eye on.
Emmanuel says, what about Kimpembe? Will he be available this summer? He'd be a great signing for us. I don't think he would cost that much, 30 to 40 million. That's not much. That's a lot. Still very young and experienced.
Yeah, those are two good points there. I think that he is young and has a lot of experience for his age. You know, he's played for the French national team and could end up being PSG's first choice centre back this season if Thiago Silva leaves at the end of the Champions League. But this is again my opinion, but I think that Kimpembe has a lot to develop. You know, a long way to go. I think that his performances have been pretty erratic recently, as in he has some games where, you know, his concentration perhaps isn't too hot, and playing for PSG as well, you know, you're not doing that much defending in Liga. So keep an eye on his Champions League displays if he does play in the next few weeks, and maybe make a bit of an assessment on that, because I would say that if he was to go, you need a bit more experience in that PSG first team at a higher level. And for me, I don't know if he would want to move. I think he's kind of a PSG sort of through and through. He grew up at the club and has probably assurances on game time next season. So with Thiago Silva maybe going. So left field one, an interesting player, but yeah.
Question on Thiago. Adam says, do you think Thiago Silva, obviously a PSG, still has something in him, or has he passed his time? Because we again were linked with another pensioner, should I say? But we were linked with Thiago Silva. Used to be absolutely one of the best centre backs around. What's he like now? Is he past it as Itzmo's suggesting here?
I think there's a little bit of both. You know, he definitely still has something to offer. He's actually been, you know, he's actually been pretty good in the last 18 months or so. My issue with Thiago Silva is perhaps leadership in the bigger games. You know, the 6-1 against Barcelona, he didn't really, you know, show much leadership in that game, and those sort of real crunch moments where you really want him to step up as an imposing defender, as one of the world's best defenders supposedly, as a captain, as an experienced player for Brazil, you know, their Premier centre back for quite some time. That hasn't really happened, but I think he definitely, if Arsenal were to sign him after this, I think that would be a pretty shrewd move. You wouldn't have to play every game. You'd probably play him in and out of the team. Wouldn't play in the Europa League probably. And he knows David Luiz, there'll be a good relationship there. And he's definitely got a lot to offer young players. He's definitely a leader.
Is he slowed down though? Is he?
Yeah, he has slowed down a little bit. So you might need some pace alongside him. But he's still a good defender, pound for pound. He's still a good defender. So I quite like that as a move. But again, how long has he got? A year, 2 years? So depends how far you're looking ahead.
Luca says, how about Boubakary Samir over at another Lille player?
Yeah, Samare. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I think that's another interesting one to keep an eye on next season. I think if we're talking about defensive midfielders in a very similar position to Ibrahima Diallo, perhaps, in that I'd want him to stay in France another year. He's a little bit further along, and he's had some really good displays in France. But I think there are maybe more worthwhile options this summer.
All right. Robbie asked Adam about, I don't know, I'm not familiar with this guy, Quadio Kone.
No, I'm not overly au fait with the name, to be honest.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that, Quadio Kone.
But it rings a bell, but I couldn't really tell you too much about him.
Okay. There was one of our, I can't find it now. There's another one. Completely me. There was a good one that I wanted to specifically ask you about, but I cannot find it. You know, there's so many comments coming in, they're just whizzing past. I'll ask you about this one. This guy asked, what about Memphis Depay? He's in the last year of his contract, will be available cheap, attacking playmaker. Is he in the last year of his contract? I don't think he's in the last year, is he?
I think Depay is he's been brilliant for Lyon, and I think he's found his place.
He Man United, didn't he? But
I think with the United thing, there are probably a couple of caveats there. You know, maybe a little bit early, maybe too much pressure with the number 7 shirt, and expected to just turn up and dominate to a team that were, you know, on a downward curve after Alex Ferguson, Mourinho and Van Gaal, and then those sorts of managers. Perhaps there's a lot of turbulence there, so maybe he was a little bit unlucky there. But I think with Leon, he's proven that his best position is actually a striker or even an attacking midfielder when he grew up as a winger, and he's playing up there for Holland, and he's really proven himself in that role, and he's Leon's best player by quite some distance. So he wants to progress. He's constantly blowing his own trumpet, if you like. So if he sees Arsenal as a step up, which I guess it is at the very least, in terms of European football this season it is, because Leon probably won't be in the champion in any sort of European football after in Europa League. He might be inclined, and Leon are expecting to lose players this summer, and he's one of those people the players that could be on his way out. So it's possible, but again, is it the right fit? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think I could see that. It'd be a good addition, personality-wise, perhaps. Although he may take some managing.
I wanted to ask. I've got a question for you, right? Nicolas Pepe. Of course, he's come to Arsenal, massive fee. I think he's had a bit of an indifferent season. I think a lot of Arsenal fans are looking on him now and thinking, you know what, we feel that this has been his season to adapt, but we've seen enough in him that next year he can be that player that we've paid all that money for. What's his best position? Because he's played out wide on the right-hand side for literally the whole of the season. There's been suggestions that he could possibly play in that number 10 position. There's been suggestions that he should play more centrally in the forward positions. I don't know. When he was at Lille, what was his position and what is his best position?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting debate. I think, first of all, at Lille, he started relatively slowly too. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. And at Lille, under Bielsa, he played as a striker. He played up front to varying success. He did okay there. I think, though, the best position debate is a little bit sort of more nuanced than do you play him in the right or in the middle. I think he just needs to play close to the goal. So if you play him on the right, you need to maybe not ask him to do much defensive work. I mean, everybody watching this can watch more Arsenal than me. So, maybe they've got their own opinions on how much defensive work he should be doing or he does do. But I think you need to give him sort of free rein to express himself and play close to the goal, because he scored all those goals for Lille, and that's the season before he left. And although he wasn't playing nominally as a striker, he might as well have been. He was playing very far forward off the right. So I think it's more of a whole sort of a holistic approach to the team that needs to suit him rather than shifting him around. So I think you're right. He looks like he's adapting the season. He's still extremely talented, and there's been moments of brilliance, but he needs to be used in the right way as well as playing in the right position.
Very, very, very skillful player. I do enjoy watching him. Right, we're going to do the last couple now because, Adam, I know you've got a busy day. Loco says, and I know this guy doesn't actually play in France. He plays for Barcelona, but he is French. Umtiti.
I think Umtiti's a really interesting one. Obviously, if he could stay fit. I think he's had so many injury issues over the last few years, been in and out of that Barcelona team. He's kind of lost his place a little bit to Clement Lenglet to some extent. And I would be wary with him because he's getting on a little bit now and is injury prone. So if you were looking for, again, the bigger brother, he in theory is a good idea, but a huge risk.
All right. And Jay says, what are your thoughts on Ousmane Dembele? Again, another French player.
Yeah.
We know he's playing over there in Dortmund, went to Barcelona for that massive fee, and it is not gone right at all.
Yeah, I think for him, again, he's had loads of injury issues in Barcelona. He's also had a few sort of attitude-related problems. He's quite laid back as a character, extremely laid back. Perhaps isn't as focused as perhaps the rest of that Barcelona team are. With they're very sort of professional is probably the wrong word, but they're extremely focused as a unit, and led by Messi as well. I think that he just needs consistency and needs to stay fit for a season before we could really sort of start to assess his career as a whole. Because he was brilliant at Dortmund, wasn't he? That season you mentioned there, and the fee at the time seemed big, but given his ceiling, it seemed okay, fine, given the money you've got from Neymar. So I think he needs time just to play and to express himself because he's so talented, but needs to stay fit and needs to concentrate on his football.
All right. Well, listen, Adam, I want to thank you very, very much today. I know we fired a load of questions about French football, but thank you very much. And tell us once again all about what you do.
Yeah, I'm writing at GFFN. Find us on Twitter at GFFN. And we recently released a European football magazine focusing on all the big stories from the top 5 leagues, which I edit. I edit the magazine, and there's some player profiles, latest news, club columns dedicated to every club in each issue, and it's available as a hard copy and as a PDF download on GFFN's Twitter and all the Get Football outlets. So check that out if you get the chance.
Okay, well, Adam, thank you very much once again for coming on, and it's been an absolute pleasure. And I want to thank everybody for watching Transfer Daily. Today's been a special where we've had Adam White from Get French Football News live, giving us the rundown. And going by what Adam's saying, it looks like Gabriel will be a good signing for Arsenal if that one happens. So looking forward to that. Thanks for watching the show today, and we'll be back